Paul to my right.
Dustin Doyle.
James Rowe.
Andrew Greenwood.
Susie Pauls.
We can all stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Now for business. Go ahead, Adam. I didn't know if you were up first or not. Okay.
It's good to see you all again. It's been a while. So for today, there's really no ordinance before you or anything like that. This is just our follow-up, precursor to the public hearing and adoption process. So there's not going to be any major budget proposals that you see this afternoon, but we really wanted to, for the good of the public, kind of introduce kind of key budget terms and those kind of things for interested parties that want to participate in the public hearing. Also, really at the public hearing, it's going to be primarily department's expenditure requests. So for this afternoon, we're going to really focus on kind of the revenue budget forecast and those types of things as we go forward with town expenditure requests. Perfect. So as far as where we're at in the planning process for the town, we're right at that kind of midway point where we kind of work with the department heads. We have a compiled budget forecast and estimate for next year for all the town departments, and we're now at the public process where we're really going through the council and ordinance and gateway tracking, with the next two council meetings being pretty significant. Your next regularly scheduled council meeting is the budget public hearing. And then currently our budget calendar has us up for the budget ordinance vote and adoption at the end of September. There's municipal finance is, if nothing else, it's kind of alphabet soup. So what I wanted to do before I just started running through all these terms, especially over the next few meetings, just wanted to kind of quickly do a lay of the land as far as kind of terms 101. No one needs to be an expert on all this, but really just for key items. So you may hear us reference something called Gateway or the DLGF. Those are state regulatory bodies. So the Indiana State Board of Accounts and the Department of Local Government Finance actually teamed up in a joint venture to provide a transparency portal called Gateway. So the town's ultimate budget, advertised budgets, as well as the adopted budgets, all are actually submitted electronically through that portal. Additionally, the notice to taxpayers, which is referred to as Form 3, that notices the public hearing that we're planning to submit this Friday, is also submitted electronically through that process. I won't read through all of these, but on the kind of revenue and tax impact, are the revenue budgets that you see for general property tax are budgeted on a cash basis. So they're budgeted on a net property tax or net circuit breaker basis. So we calculate the maximum levy, we adjust for the anticipated circuit breaker, and budget the result. For net assessed value purposes, we use the most recent certified net assessed values for the town of Barkersville. They were up quite a bit. I think off memory, about 525 million, I think offhand. And that growth rate as opposed to the state growth quotient for levy was pretty significant. When we look at the bottom line under revenue and tax environment, the town budgets, there's a portion that are cost shared to the utilities. It's really intended to be an administrative cost share. So there's certain departments, town council, IT, municipal ops, municipal finance, amongst a few others, that are their total operating costs are essentially shared out to the various different utilities. So you'll see some of that in the revenue budget as far as support income, as far as amounts that the utilities are essentially paying for that administrative overhead. Big terms on the expense side. So unlike private accounting or public accounting, municipal finance uses this term of funds and accounts. So you still maybe have one bank account physically, but there might be 10 different accounting funds that essentially earmark or bucket those different pooled cash resources. And that's because essentially every fund has its own charter or purpose. So the general fund has its own certain types of eligible expenses, whereas the Parks non-reverting fund has its own kind of chartered use. The Parks impact fee has its own eligible use. So for accounting purposes, we essentially budget and account for those funds separately. We budget at the line item level. So that's looking at, the major classification, that's looking at personnel services, supplies, operating services, and then capital outlays. And then one step down there, the actual object level is like office supply versus operating supply, or salaries and wages as opposed to like overtime. So that's how the town budgets. And then as far as when we think about the term budget, there's actually many budgets. So even this year, there's the 2021 original budget, which was the amount that was approved by council last fall. And then there's the 2021 current budget, which is the result of prior year's approval plus any changes to date for that. Our current year forecast that you'll see in the charts here in a moment are looking at July 1 of this year through the end of this calendar year. And all of the year-to-date numbers you see are through June 30th. And then the proposed budget for this case is the proposed 2022 budget as it exists in draft today. So first thing we wanted to do is look at a mid-year, and again, this is through June. So I know these charts for the audience are going to be probably a little hard to see. There's a monitor over there if it's helpful. But working left to right with the bar chart, blue is revenue, red is expense. So the left to right, that's 2019 actual, 2020 actual, 2021 original budget, 2021 current budget, and then our year to date. So you can see over the last few years, both in actuals, the revenues have been trending higher, expenses have actually been trending down. And then when we look at the budget for 2021, it actually had, in aggregate, a slight budgeted deficit. So that in the original budget and then the current budget, there was a slight more budget expense over revenue. But when we look at the current year-to-date actuals, we see a very different picture. We see year-to-date through 6 months, we see almost twice as much revenue as expense year-to-date. On the right-hand side of the chart, the pie graph is essentially just an allocation of the different revenue accounts and types. Largest being general property tax, support income, local income tax, etc. Town's also in a pretty large growth setup. So building permits and engineering type reimbursements are also a fairly sizable portion of the cumulative revenue picture. The other thing that I personally see when looking at this is actually quite a bit of diversification as well. There's not really one revenue component that's more than half of the total revenue picture. So that's something else to take note of. Looking at expenses as opposed to revenues, the pie graph is looking at the various different pie chart, I should say, is looking at the year-to-date actuals by those major classifications. So personal services, which is employee salaries, benefits, is one of the largest components of the year-to-date expenditures, followed by supplies and then capital outlays, with other kind of expenses being kind of the smaller portion. The personal services is in line with what I would say is industry standard. Anywhere between that 70 to 80% is pretty standard with regards to municipal budgets. It continues to be one of the largest line items as far as operating expenses go. Budget to actual is on the right. And again, it's probably a little hard from that screen, but in this, just to help you visually, the blue chart is the current budget, and then the red is the year-to-date actual spend for each component halfway through the year. And then on the y-axis is vertically are the different departments. You can see pretty much across the board, every department is under budget. And in some cases, some, if you essentially doubled that red line, are actually under budget, even on a projected basis. So when we put all that together, and we worked with each of those departments to look at year-to-date actual, and then we actually worked with them line by line to say, this is how much you spent in through June 30. How much do you expect to send between July 1 and the end of the year? And we added those together into that 2021 projection. So right now for 2021, we are projecting excess revenue for the year, just based on the current trends and current funded positions. So that's kind of the backdrop of the budget picture as we start thinking about next year. We wanted to get a feel for where we were at with, revenue. Were we on track? Were we a little ahead, or were we a little behind relative to that? And the data basically speaks to revenues are increasing, and expenditures, in this case, we're either staying flat or actually trending a little lower than budget. So turning the page from 2021 to 2022 now, and it's also probably just good housekeeping. The town's budget cycle and its fiscal cycle are on a calendar year. So everything here is Jan 1 through 12/31. And when we look at the total revenue forecast for the town, we're just under the total amount of $10 million cumulatively. And when the chart on the right is showing those top three major sources. So general property tax, support income from utilities, and local income tax. You can see how those have trended over the past 2 years, what we're projecting this year, and then how much of the projection this year we're budgeting into next year. So what I would call out is we're actually projecting a slight decrease in 2022 over 2021's projection. The major component there is the support income. Some of the departments that are actually shared in that actually had a net budget decrease. So because their budget actually had a net decrease, we're sharing out less, so the support income is less. Okay. Always trying to think about impacts to taxpayers. So the starting with the chart on the top left, that's the certified net assessed value. I have my glasses on and I can't see that. So the 2022 net assessed value for budgeting purposes is $525.8 million. So the net assessed values have continued to increase quite well. For the purposes of budgeted levy, we're projecting the state max increase of 4.3%, plus the additional new debt service levy for the police station project. When we add all of that together, just based on the net assessed value increases, we're still projecting that your cumulative town rate, even with the new debt service levy, is going to be relatively the same, if not possibly slightly less. And that you can actually see that the chart immediately below the more area chart is the town certified levy projection, and it's increased as well. That is what is provided through what's called the assessed value growth quotient. So essentially the state of Indiana provides what that increase can be. For 2022, it can grow at 4.3%. So your actual net assessed values have increased at a higher rate than 4.3. So without any other changes, the tax rate goes down in that situation. That's what you see on the top right. So that's the tax rate trend over time. There's a lot of different schools of thought here. My personal preference, just from a budget perspective, is I like steady Eddie. I personally, from my perspective, it makes it a lot easier to do the financial planning if we kind of know relatively where that's at. There's a whole lot of tax and fiscal policy reasons that you could debate on that, but generally speaking, when you look at page 22 to page 21, they're basically trying to be flat. Okay. And then the final bottom right chart is the net assessed value versus levy growth. This is what I've been saying, but I'm just trying to show it graphically. So essentially, a tax rate that's billed to an individual property is just a calculation. It's a calculation of the certified levy divided by the net assessed value divided by 100. And so if net assessed values are growing faster than your levy, tax rate goes down. Conversely, if you have a situation where the levy is growing faster than values, tax rates go up. Okay. And then the last slide I had, and I know that was a lot of information, so I'll gladly take any questions. It's just the point in time kind of overview of where we're at. We'll cover this in much more detail during the actual public hearing and the department proposals. But in aggregate right now, the 2022 revenue budget for the town is right at $9.77 million, of which there's approximately $1.25 million of that is budgeted grant proceeds. So about $1 million of that is an anticipated state grant for additional road work, and an additional $250,000 of that is an anticipated revenue source from the Indiana DNR for a trail project. In addition to that, right now, the budget proposals across the whole town are $10,556,000. The majority of those numbers or funds are special purpose kind of capital impact fee type related funds. The two funds that I would point you to with regards to kind of budget performance is Fund 101, which is the top one, which is the general fund. That's the general main fund of the town, and the rainy day fund. Those are the two funds that really speak to kind of fiscal health. And right now, as projected for the end of next year, the town's general fund ends with a budget surplus of $73,000 with an anticipated fund balance of $3.5 million. Most notably, has an operating reserve of approximately 60% versus the 25% policy reserve. When we look at the general fund, which is fund number 448, third from the bottom, it's anticipated to end the year with $1,850,000, or at a 22% reserve against the 25% target. And this budget also proposes a revenue for the rainy day fund, where essentially the town is funding from current revenues about 1% of its tax revenue to essentially boost its rainy day reserves. So about $100,000 of next year's projected tax revenue is intended to be transferred into the rainy day fund to build that back up to that 25% target over the next few years. So I know that was a mouthful and that was a lot. Thank you for being patient. Happy to take any questions. Otherwise, if there's any questions or changes, let me know. Otherwise, this will be the revenue kind of backdrop budget that we use going into the proposals at your next regularly scheduled meeting.
Any questions, council? Thanks for taking the time and breaking it down for us and the process. It's been great.
Cool. Thank you. Well, very good. That's all I got. Thanks.
Any other council business? Ordinance and resolutions. Is this a second reading? Didn't we do? Was that introduction? Okay. Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
You're good? Okay, this is the first reading of ordinance 2021-10, which is a request to rezone approximately 38 acres located north of 2 Cent Road, east of Baldwin Street, from R3 medium density residential to R4 high density residential. This was heard at a public hearing at the Plan Commission on July 19th. I did receive an unfavorable recommendation from the Plan Commission. Also introduced at the council on August 10th. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I believe the petitioner's here in the back of the room for any questions or a presentation also.
Any questions, council? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes from August 8th? Any questions or corrections? Okay, do I have any motion?
Move to approve the minutes from the regular meeting on August 10th.
Have a motion by Mr. Doyle. Second by Ms. Moore. All in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. Aye. None opposed. And utility budgets and treasury reports. We have a chance to review them. Any questions? Okay, we'll move on. I don't think we need an approval on that. So move on to the claims. Any questions?
Nancy, can you tell me what APS, the workforce, is that just payroll?
Yes,
So we're spending about $260,000 a month to just do payroll? Is that basic, is that pretty much, or does it do more? Does it have more?
it does more. It's APS is included in HR too. Kim's module, and then it's all one big combination. We can get it broke down for you.
Is that part of the deductions off FICA and state taxes? Is that all in one
It is actual payroll.
payroll? So that's the actual payroll for the, okay,
Okay, that's the whole shit.
the whole thing, right?
Like, to your point, what are we paying for payroll services for that?
Payroll services, that's just being ran through.
Right, so what's the breakout? I think is what you're looking for. Right.
Seems like a whole lot.
That's not the service.
Any other questions on the claim?
Thinking it's,
Move to approve the claims.
I have a motion to approve the claims for Mr. Doyle. And second by Ms. Moore. All in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed? You're right.
Thank you. Good afternoon. First item I have for you today is I'd like to switch companies for cleaning this building. And with the estimates that we have on your sheet today, I'd like to switch to PhD janitorial. Would actually like to go back to twice a week now that we have filled the building with staff again.
Is there any questions? I'm okay with it. We do this by consensus or by consensus? Go ahead.
I make a motion to approve PhD janitorial service for twice a week cleaning town hall.
I have a motion by Ms. Grover to approve. I have a second by Ms. Moore. All in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye. Aye. None opposed?
Thank you. That's all I have today. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin, got that music queued up. That's it, President's Joe. We just have to have music, background music.
It is, isn't it? It's an aura, if you will.
Yes, it is.
I have a few items for you this afternoon. First is transfer of ownership, approval of the secondary plat, and acceptance of financial guarantees for Morningside subdivision, section 8. Staff has reviewed the transfer paperwork as well as the guarantees and find those to be in order. There are a few minor outstanding items from our August 18th final inspection on the punch list. So staff would recommend the council accept the secondary plat, transfer of ownership, and the financial guarantees contingent on addressing those punch list items. believe the only items that aren't complete that they're posting performance guarantees on are erosion control, surveying, monumentation, and street signs, which are the two common performance guarantees.
Any questions or motion?
Just to be asked. I didn't see anything on here on the, so long as it's clear. So what, where the three, Joe, I know we've got the acceptance of bonds, but I don't see.
Second,
So right here.
that's the bonding. It's a secondary plat, the transfer of ownership, and the bonds or the financial guarantees.
Mr. President, I approve that we accept the secondary plat from 186 Section 8. We also accept the transfer of ownership for the developer installed utilities and accept the maintenance performance guarantees conditioned on addressing the punch list items.
Those from Mr. Doyle,
Second.
second by Ms. Moore. All in favor, raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. None opposed?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, next item I have is a request by the developer of the Sawyer Walk plan development to waive construction detail TR11. Provision in TR11A is that when constructing intersection improvements, the entirety of the main line road is to be fully reconstructed with those improvements. We saw this recently at the Saddle Club Road intersection. In this case, that section of road was reconstructed in 2018 with the development of the Morningside subdivision. The developer is requesting waive that provision for reconstruction. Staff is recommending approval of the waiver to reconstruct the entire roadway with the condition that the roadway is milled and overlaid for the length of their improvements. They are committing to provide the intersection improvements such as XL, decel lanes. This would just be to waive the reconstruction of main line 144. I believe the petitioner's here. There he is. So I think he's had a small presentation if you'd like to hear it, or he'd be happy to answer any questions.
I mean, I'm going to move to approve the waiver for the construction detail TR11.
Have a motion to
We
approve.
need to do it subject to the milling
Yeah,
and re.
Yeah, that'd be with the mill of, I think we recommend an 1.5 mill and an 1.5 HMA overlay.
So with the, say that again.
Resurfacing,
So
I think would be
resurfacing
sufficient.
with the inch overlay and the 1.5 mil.
1.5, yeah.
Okay, 1.5 inch. Okay, add on to that motion.
I have a motion. Have a second. Have a second. How about Ms. Moore? All in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye. Aye. None opposed?
All right, and last item I have for the council's consideration, the Stormwater Utility Board in July put out a request for bids for repair and upgrade of trench drains at Green Notch Road and Old Trail. We did receive bids back from CC&T Construction and Walls Construction. At the last Stormwater Board meeting, the board did approve CC&T Construction to perform the work in the amount of $59,300. This contract is just one of the council to ratify that, and we can get that to the contractor and get going. This is all out of stormwater repairs and maintenance budget.
So is this a high priority area that we had a lot of issues with?
There's some issues with the trench drains themselves, as the connection on the casting is failing, and snow plows tend to catch them. Between that and I think the sizing is a little bit undersized, which causes some excessive flooding on the roadways. They did try to bid this in 2020 and did not receive any bids back.
stormwater trench drain project for CNT construction in the amount of $59,300.
We have a motion by Ms. Mill. Second. A second by Ms. Halls. All in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye. Aye. Motion carried, none opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys, appreciate it. Okay. Mr. Bertrand,
I don't have anything.
nothing at all.
Nothing. It's been a great budget process thus far. I think you have. Other than that, I'm in.
Thank you, sir.
Then we have
Yeah, okay, well, I got a motion to.
motion to adjourn.
Okay. First item on the agenda is our NDOT easement with Speedway. If you recall, at the last meeting, we were looking for some confirmation from NDOT for reimbursement, and we have that now. The amount, and I just spoke with Nancy, so if I'm able to notify accounts payable today, we can cut the checks on Friday because David needs to hand deliver those ASAP. So if you go to page 7, actually, is the total amount that we need to spend for the court system and to pay the 2 appraisers. So page 1 did not include the appraisers, so.
So a motion to approve 180, not to exceed 185,140 for easement acquisition.
Mr. Daniel, second by Ms. Qualls, all in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye. Aye. None opposed.
Thank you. So this will go to trial. Speedway has objected to this dollar amount. So I don't know the trial date. David, do you know the trial date?
Now, there's a pre-trial conference in either late September or October, so it'll be a while.
But once we pay this amount, the easement is ours, and then we get to fight about it in court. So more to come on that. The next item is Mitchell is here with Baker Tilly to give an update on our utility projects and rates and bonds and schedule for future meetings on this topic. So turn over to Mitchell.
So if you recall, at the last meeting, we were talking about looking at bonds for both the water, sewer, and electric utility. In the background, we've been working on timing for this. Currently, at your next scheduled meeting, we'll introduce both the rate ordinance and the bond ordinance. And then at the subsequent meeting, you would adopt the bond ordinance. And then on your October 12th meeting, we would propose to have a public hearing on rates, and based on that, have rates be adopted. And then looking to sell bonds then near the end of October with closing before the holiday in November. So that's kind of where we're at. At the last meeting, we had presented rate studies, and as part of that, we were requested to break out the projects we were proposing to bond for, as well as looking at the total rate increase and proposing to phase that in over 2 periods. I can start out, if you have the reports that we had provided in your packet, I'll start out on the water. If you want to turn to page 10 on the water report. If anyone needs a copy, I do have those with me. So page 10 is going to lay out the schedule of estimated sources and uses of funds. If you recall on the water utility, we're looking to not only do a new money bond issue, but also looking to refund one of your outstanding bond issues. Overall, we're showing the 2021 bonds would be for $28 million. That includes both the new money portion as well as the refunding. And if you look down below, you can see the projects that we're proposing to refund, or the projects we're proposing for the new money portion. So in total, we're looking at a project cost of $18.8 million. The remaining $10 million on that bond issue would then be used to do the refunding of the outstanding bonds, or in other words, lowering the interest rate and generating annual debt service savings. So page 10 is the split out. Moving on in the report, if you move on to page 18, this is the other major change to the water utility report. So on page 18, what we're proposing here is to phase in the increase in rates over a 2-year period. Under phase one, we'd be looking at an increase for an average residential bill of $3.41. And then phase two, you'd be looking at an increase of $2.66
Per month.
per month.
Thank you.
Yep. And the way we've done this is we're structuring your proposed bonds so that your debt service in the first year is a little lower, helping you to be able to phase that rate in so your ratepayers don't have that initial shock of the total rate increase at the same time. Any questions on the water? Moving over to sewer. 10, laying out the project costs and funding for sewer. A second to get there.
Quick on the water, when's the last time we raised the rates? The public's knowledge.
2019 was the last time water rates were raised.
Well, how much did we raise?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Before that, I think it was even further back. Yeah. 419.
For the public hearing, let's make sure we have
Yeah, we can put that together and have some information on that.
the graph.
Yep, we can do that.
There's actually a rate reduction in that period also.
I know there was, yeah.
So page 10 for the sewage works. Estimated project costs here, including the I-69 sanitary mains, 2 Cent Road, State Road 135, Gravity Sanitary Main, Bluff Creek Regional Lift Station, and the maintenance facility. Total costs for those projects are $7,050,000. Including the non-construction costs, we're looking at a total estimated project cost and bonding of $7,275,000. Again, similar to what we did on the water, we're proposing here to phase the increase over 2 years. If you turn to page 16. Using a similar method to what we're doing on the water by phasing in that debt service, you can see for phase one, the overall increase would be $4.89. And then phase two would be $6.06. Any questions on sewer? And similar to water, we can look at when the last time the rates were raised and
And you have in there the comparison.
we
showing
do.
Us versus the other communities.
Yeah, and if, for the public hearing, if you want handouts or anything like that, we can
I
provide
think
those.
just going through those, here's the last time we raised rates, here's where we're at, here's where we are compared to other communities so that the public can see that and understand
Yes, we can certainly do that.
where we were and where we're going.
Yep, exactly. Moving over to electric, page 6 on the electric. Page 6 then has your schedule of estimated project costs and funding. Estimated project costs, including meter replacement, LED street lamp upgrades, and line upgrades, is $2,620,000. Adding non-construction costs, total bonding would be $2.8 million. And again, similar to water and sewer, we're looking to phase in the proposed increase in rates. And in this report, that can be seen on page 16. As far as the electric utility, rates were last increased, I believe, in 2003. It was the formal rate study, so going on almost 20 years now. Phase one, we're looking at an increase of $12.10, and under phase two, $7.09. Electric is a little farther back on the rate increase.
Same graph.
Yep. Yep, we can do that as well.
Copies of these.
I do.
Stormwater.
Stormwater, we're going to be moving forward then with the refunding. We will be discussing, we had talked last time about how to sell each of these proposed bonds. Working with our pricing director, we're thinking of doing a request for proposals for an underwriter and just doing all the bonds with them. As we get closer to year end, the bond market kind of gets flooded. So we're thinking it would be best to work with them and kind of stage out the bonds over a couple of weeks. And that way we get the best pricing possible. The problem with trying to sell them all on the same day is you kind of limit who's going to bid on each of the different bonds. So hopefully working with them, we can figure out a strategy that's going to get the best rate for each of the different utilities.
What's the approximate total?
The total for all. So let's see, we got 28.72. We're looking about 40 million.
Maybe on your paper too, we should have something showing all these things that we need to have done.
Well-
Because it looks like we're making a lot of money, but we're planning for the future of all the projects that we have,
Yeah, the list of the
the major
Capital
projects.
Yeah.
projects.
capital projects.
Well, that's I mean, you look at the census numbers, the first part of them come out, what's the growth here?
Yeah.
It's almost over 100%. I mean, we have to, if we either stay stagnant or we grow.
Right. But people have to understand that it's not just for today's things for today,
That's right.
it's for planning for tomorrow.
Anything else from me?
Appreciate it.
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Thanks, Mitchell.
Mhm.
The next item on the agenda is our Travis Road Force Main West Side project. Andrew Gordon is here with Westler Engineering, and will give you an update and hopefully a motion to approve contractor for this project.
Thanks, Kevin. Good afternoon. Kevin mentioned, my name is Andrew Gordon, project manager with Westler Engineering. Here to update the council. The town received 3 bids for the Travis Road Force Main project on August 10th. Low bidder is Infrastructure Systems out of Orleans at a total base bid price of $239,701. The bids have been reviewed. Certified bid tabulation has been delivered to Kevin and also to the town. The award of the project is before the council today for approval to Infrastructure Systems.
Have you worked with Infrastructure Systems before?
Westler Engineering has, yes.
How, have they been?
They are a responsive and responsible contractor in our opinion, yes.
The thing that scares me is, I'll just be, very blunt here, is we've had low bids before. And when I see 2 bids that are kind of similar and then one that's almost $140,000 less, and that's, you're talking 50% of their bid. We've had some contractors that really messed up, and so we're very cognizant of making sure that you trust them. If you trust them, we trust them. But I wanted to make sure that I got that on the record that, we've got to make sure that these guys perform. So
That's a great observation. Part of our job as far as representing the town is to check references and to make sure that they are going to do what they promised they were going to do. They have confirmed that they can do the project with that bid.
Any other questions? That's my only question I have. Same thing as you guys.
The motion can include signature.
I would move to approve the contract for Infrastructure Systems in the amount not to exceed $239,701 for the Travis Force Main, and the council president to sign contracts.
And Ms. Wells, second by Ms. Bowles. All in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. Aye. And opposed.
Thank you. And we will have a change order on this project. So we're just now finishing up details on connection at the plant. We didn't have that at the time of bidding, so we've about got that finalized and we'll come back to you. Price on that. Should be 2 minutes. Getting closer to finalizing this, wrapping up easements. I do have a concerned business owner here in the audience, and I'm not sure if Mr. Netherly would like to address the council or not, or I think maybe he was just here to make sure that this was moving along, but
Kevin, can I ask just one question? David Nethery's VP. I've been in here a couple times. Is there a time frame component built into this contract to get it done by the end of the year with this contractor?
Yes, that's part of their contract.
What's the exact date?
December 31st.
Down to the end.
Well, I shouldn't say December 31st. That's the goal, is to have it done before the end of this year, but their contract times call for early December.
If not, that's, like a $30,000 price out of my pocket to put a temporary tank in that you guys don't really want to pump and I don't really want to do, but I've never heard of this company, Orleans. I know Orleans pretty well, but
I guess if there's any concerns with the quality of work from the contractor and their ability to do it, I'd be happy to look into it further.
Hey, Kevin, why don't you just keep in contact with Mr. Neverland and we'll just make communication open and we can go from there.
Kevin's been very
Mhm.
communicative about this. I mean, because we're getting down to brass tacks, getting right down to the end, so it's fine. I have a question for you as a council, because I ran into Morgan County Councilor Kenny Hale. Does that ring a bell with anybody?
Morgan County Commissioner.
Commissioner.
And he was saying there was not an agreement between Johnson County and Morgan County in regard to using their facilities and, I guess, revenue sharing between, for this sewer project. Is that true, untrue? Do I have anything to worry about here?
We won't be entering into anything with the county. It would be the Morgan County Sewer District, and those conversations are continuing.
Thank you for clarifying that. I hear so many different things from so many different people on a daily basis. So I appreciate it. Kevin, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yep. Next item I have is our SCADA task order for wastewater. We would like to increase that. This year we have had a lot of interaction with Strand for our wastewater SCADA system. And we've exhausted the task order year to date. We would like to add an additional $10,000 to this task order to get us through the year, the rest of the year. I don't envision us using all of that or going over it, but we have met our limit. So the program came out with some upgrades because of Apple, and we've struggled with the system and the new technology and the new software. So Strand's engineers had to spend a lot of time between us and the vendor to try to keep things moving along. And there's an update that's coming out that they've just upgraded another client. We're waiting until September 7th to see how that works out, and then they're going to upgrade our system. We hope that that takes care of the bugs with it. So not only have we had software issues, but we've had the ongoing normal things that we have throughout the year. But the software issues have, in my opinion, put us over budget.
This is up to 3,000.
This is increasing the task order. That's originally 30,000 because it covers water and wastewater. So we want to add 10,000. It takes that task order now to 40,000. So we're adding an additional 10 to the task order, which takes it to not to exceed 40,000.
We're already to that 30,000.
We've hit our limit on the wastewater side. We haven't hit it on the water side. This is probably the first time I've had to come to you for a SCADA increase. Usually we're okay on the SCADA portion, but this year we've just had extra items come up.
Any other questions?
I move to approve the increase for the Strand Task Order 21-03 for SCADA improvements to 40,000 from 30.
Second.
Not to exceed.
Right, yeah, not to exceed 40,000.
Yeah, I have a motion, Ms. Rose, second, Mr. Warren. All in favor, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed.
Thank you. The next one is another task order. So we do hydraulic reviews for new developments, and those are reimbursable. We've had a lot of development this year. So we've exhausted this task order also. We're asking for additional 10,000 to continue doing the hydraulic reviews, and then we invoice these developers to get reimbursed for this.
We've had problems recovering.
No, just slow. And that's just,
So that's why this, if they were paying when they should, we probably wouldn't have this.
well, so, right. So we invoice and then money comes back into miscellaneous revenue. So you don't see a, plus and a minus on this. So.
Any other questions? Motion?
I'd move to increase strain task order 21-04 to 20,000, not to exceed 20,000 for the water analysis.
Motion by Mr. Young. Second by Ms. Moore. All in favor, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed?
Okay, thank you. Now we're moving into fleet management. I have 3 items in regards to fleet management. Tom Green is here from Enterprise to help answer questions. So with chip shortage, I'm sure you've heard about long lead times on vehicles, on fleet vehicles right now. Some of these vehicles have 32-week lead time. Advice from Enterprise, we'd like to get our name in line for some of these vehicle replacements and the additional vehicles. So we can go through these one at a time. I think the first one you have on the list is a crane truck for wastewater. So the current vehicle we're using now is a 1988 hand-me-down line truck from the electric department. This vehicle's passed its life by probably 10 years. So this next vehicle is probably a 10-plus year lifespan vehicle. It is one of the more expensive specialized vehicles for us, just over $122,000. Traditionally in utilities, we pay up front for all vehicles. Mitchell is still here and he might be able to help me out on this, but we do now have the opportunity for lease payment on these vehicles and not capitalize the purchase. We do have the option of after the first year, we can pay for the vehicle full, but leaving, I think, $1,000 left where they hold the title, maintain the service. And
it's negotiable amount. It can be $1, it could be $500, it could really be whatever the town would like to see on their account.
Kevin, would the goal be to own the vehicles after the term of the lease? Is that what, or is there a decision process?
So on this vehicle being specialized, yes, we would own this vehicle.
Okay, so at the end of the 60-month lease, that's ours.
So the way the flexible finance is set up is that there's still a residual, and inevitably at the end of that 60 months, there would be a residual still due on the vehicle. At that time, you could just pay cash. We would recommend still managing the asset for you, just leaving $1 on that title so that we can maintain title. But we would not recommend replacing a $126,000 vehicle every 5 years. That just fiscally, it does not make sense, and it would be a responsible decision. But based on previous buying patterns, cash has been the previous behavior, and we're open to allowing whatever works for the town, which allows to fit within your budget.
So Nate, what do you think would be the interest rate we would be able to get from the bank if we bought this right on the 60 month?
Right now, I think it's running about 3.9, maybe 3.3. I don't know. There's a gap in there.
Our interest rate would be the 3-year T-bill plus 200 basis points. So currently 3.46, I believe was today when I checked.
Budgetarily going with the lease, Kevin, what if we have the funds available? I'm just, what's the benefit? Because you got 3 large purchases, is that?
Initially, I would have said we just pay for these with cash,
Okay.
but we do have a lot of projects in the works. So, Mitchell, do you have an opinion on whether to lease or cash?
I don't necessarily have an opinion. You do have, like you said, a lot of projects coming up. Depending on timing and when bonds close, that sort of thing, maybe using some of the cash for projects right now. I think either lease or purchasing fits in for all three utilities. So I think it's really up to what you guys prefer.
And if we got it at 3.9, the total outlay is 134,000. I think the total outlay in here was 140 something, right?
Is this time sensitive, Kevin? Is this something that needs to happen right away?
It's just sensitive in the fact of long lead times and getting our name with the manufacturers to get a vehicle reserved for us, I guess. This one has a specialized utility bed that has to be built. We still don't have the specialized truck that we bought for water distribution. That was due, I think, this February. We're still waiting on it. So, the vehicle that we're using now, we've done some hydraulic repairs to it. It was just recently written up on an audit for hydraulic fluid leaking. So we're doing minor repairs to kind of get by on it. But
Purchasing that outright, I would say it's around 7,000. 7,000 or 61, 60.
and one other thing to factor is, these next three vehicles we've got on the agenda, this does not include the trade-in value. Now, this truck we're replacing is probably not going to get a lot for it, but the other vehicle, there's probably $5,000 to $8,000 in trade-in that we might see.
And we're looking at three different separate items. Do you want to see all three, group them together
Well, I
here?
think the other two are a little bit easier.
They're smaller amounts, 40 and
They're just silver items.
Right.
This is
the big one.
I mean, it's either the lease, which we're outlaying, I think it was 140, if you take that at 141, or if we buy it outright at 3.9, so the total outlay is 134 with the interest, so about a $7,000 difference on the purchase over 5 years. I mean, is there any, if we, because we still have the responsibility to do all the maintenance and everything to that.
Just logistically speaking, you transport it, all maintenance would be routed through Enterprise in terms of billing and all that. We can handle all that.
Okay.
Interest rate obviously is probably as close as the best they can get for a while, so.
I will say in terms of interest rate, and not to interrupt Mr. Roman, in terms of interest rate, obviously what we have as a quote, that the vehicle hasn't even been built, right? So at the time of delivery, once the vehicle is accepted, that interest rate does not fluctuate. It stays the same at time of delivery. So if the T-bill goes down, if you wanted to use a flexible finance, you would get the advantage of the lowest rate at the time.
That's a 5-year fix, the T-bill plus 2% basis.
Correct.
That will stay fixed for 5 years.
Correct.
And if we want to purchase it, we can go for, what if we want to, if we get an excess and we want to pay it off after a year, is there a penalty?
Yeah, no, not at all. No, the municipal lease allows you the flexibility to pay however you want, when you want.
My opinion is to purchase instead of lease. Oh, yes.
Yeah. It's pretty specialized.
Just like you said, we got 1988 in operation right now.
Just to share common practice of our government and our commercial clientele that are purchasing specialized vehicles as such. I would say it's a mixed bag. It's about 50-50. It depends on the need within the business as well as cash flow. Some people need a cash flow advantage. That's why they take advantage of lease, because at that time it frees up cash for other projects that they're working on. Others, if they are cash heavy, they say, hey, we're going to pay cash for this vehicle. vehicle. So it's really based on what we need. We're managing the facility.
Well, the rental isn't in his budget,
Is this in your budget?
but this is in your capital budget. So
This was in our proposed 2021 capital budget that is, we purchased that we approve as we go along, right? Because we've not done an official approval of all the capital projects. So I've just been coming to you with one-offs just to keep things moving along.
This would have to be in 2022 because of lead time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you said 32 weeks, so.
Was this one?
So if I was to make a recommendation, and this is really on any department coming to recommend replacing vehicles and looking at their budget for this upcoming year, now would be the time to initiate those vehicles for production because a lot of order banks will begin to close because manufacturers are, with the chip shortage, they will need to start to prepare for 2022 production year. So just to give an example, a lot of heavy duty F-250, F-350 and larger, they're already starting to close. The safeguard for our government clients is simply that they are trying to make a guarantee because it's their largest portion of their business that they will produce all those vehicles. Unfortunately, we know as the vehicle experts that that's not the case. There will be cancellations that come down the line and it's the folks that get in line last, unfortunately. So that my professional advice would be if this is something that you guys want to execute on this year for your department, Kevin, and as a town, now would be a great time to jump in because we would be able to get those vehicles delivered sometime within the next calendar year is what we're hoping. And that would be regardless of a crane on the vehicle or just a plain old Chevy Equinox with no upfit. It's a similar story on lead time where we're looking at a very long time to obtain those vehicles. The other advantage is the resale market being as high as it is for some of the vehicles that we do want to be able to go back and sell. Normally we're 110 to 115% above Black Book value. Now we're at 150 to 180%. It's crazy.
we held on to all those police.
We still have them.
We have the one, right?
We do have one.
So if they decide to purchase outright, what do we need to do to keep it in enterprise umbrella and so forth?
I would just go back and draw a quote that just shows a cash buy with a residual. And if you have a preference of 1,500 or $1, it's completely up to whatever.
Because you hold the title.
Yeah, the goal is to, as fleet management, is to maintain title because that's how we achieve those goals as
One now.
So
We'll go back and, so on that one, you'll go back and then bring that.
What's that?
You'll go back and bring another proposal to us for the purchase of that at the $1.
Yes.
I was gonna say, ultimately, the quote won't really change. It's just going.
Yeah, we just put contingent on it.
So I'll make the motion to purchase this crane truck in the amount not to exceed $122,841 on a 5-year loan with the option to pay it off and have a residual loan value of $1 to keep it under enterprise fund.
I'll second.
I have a first by Ms. Wall, second by Ms. Moore. All in favor, raise your right hand. Say aye. None opposed?
Thank you. The next item is 2 half-ton pickups with Enterprise. We will have trade-in vehicles, so these prices will go down. We do have a small adjustment from a V6 to a V8. That's only $1,000 or less per vehicle.
Either outright purchase.
Or lease.
As half-ton trucks go, just concurrent with what the market's achieving, as your government incentive applies, this is really across Ram, Ford, Chevy, which at this juncture, GM is on allocation, so they specifically have to say, we will guarantee these vehicles for production, and then we can place the order. So at the time, I would still need to go to GM and get the allocation approval. If they say no, I would come back to Kevin and make recommendations on other makes and models if these vehicles need to be replaced this year. I would recommend a 12-month cycle, so you sell these vehicles on a yearly basis because you can buy them for such a good price. So example, you can buy it for $30,000, which is, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 less than a sticker MSRP. You put 10,000 miles on it, let's say that's the average for his department in a year, we can go back and sell that vehicle for $35,000. So in essence, you're operating a negative budget on that vehicle. I know that obviously maybe citizens' concern might be like, why are they getting such nice vehicles and they're getting them every year? Ultimately, it's to put cash back into the town government and to help operate a lesser budget for his department.
As they were talking about that fleet, right, so being able to lease it.
And ultimately, that's why I would, on these vehicles, that's why I would recommend the lease structure versus a cash payment, because that's an outlay which in 12 months you would see back.
Right.
So it just makes more sense to pay for what you're going to use over that 12-month period as opposed to paying cash and then waiting 12 months to receive that back.
I see in here the monthly lease price for two is $1,100, so that's like 50 a piece.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure. Need to talk to Todd.
We're gonna have to fill these with gas.
Let's talk about fuel and maintenance.
I got your back, Todd.
So do we need to do this individually or decision?
Probably approve this for both trucks, right?
Or the,
Well, there's three.
is there,
Is there three?
oh, is there three of
two others,
those?
one on this
Oh,
one.
two and